Hey everyone, welcome to our next Avid's Students to Industry event, The Art of Mastering with Jett Galindo, and it's going to be hosted by Greg Strike Chin, which is going to be a really great session. So I'm only here really to walk you through the Q&A function, which I'm sure we're all aware of now, but it's just to encourage you. Basically, these sessions are for students, teachers, educators, anyone basically wanting to learn more about the industry. They're for you to ask your questions, and this is a great platform to do so. So be sure to utilize the Q&A function at the bottom of the webinar there and ask any question that you want. Make sure if you are a student or you are a teacher, make sure that you say your name and actually what institution you're from, and we'll be able to call you out, which would be great. So on that note, I'm going to throw that over to Greg to come on, and Jett, and basically throw the session over to you. So yeah.
Shauna, thank you so very much. Hi, everybody. Welcome wherever in the world you might be. Welcome to this session. We're really stoked to be here with the incomparable Miss Jett Galindo. So without any further ado, Jett, how are you? Welcome.
Hey, Greg, what's up? And hello, everyone. Great to be connected with you guys here with Avid for the Students to Industry session. Always a pleasure to be doing this with Greg.
Yeah, the pleasure is all mine and all ours. So for those of you who may not know, Jett and I go back a little bit. We met a couple years ago at Capitol Records in LA. So you're based in California, Jett. We've got so much to get into, but we had a great talk. That was the first time I got to meet you, and we hit it off immediately because we're such a fan of a lot of the same things: music, of course, vinyl, video games. I mean, you name it, right? So we're going to have a great time. I know that there are going to be some great questions that come through. Again, thank you to Shauna for being the glue that holds us all together. But what a pleasure to be with you, Jett. So I'm in Miami. You're based in LA. So I just wanted to quickly mention before we jump into it. Actually, Jett, you're going to be picking an attendee at random for a Pro Tools license. Is that for a free Pro Tools license? Is that correct?
That's correct. So
Awesome.
You guys stick around until the end of this webinar, and I'm going to be picking one lucky attendee at random to take home an Avid Pro Tools subscription. So stick around. It's going to be fun.
Awesome. Maybe I can finally win that Pro Tools license I've been wanting. Just kidding. All right, let's jump right into it. Jett, again, welcome. Where are you right now exactly? Are you at the bakery?
I am at the bakery.
Awesome.
And if you see here, this is our mastering studio. Our mastering studio is called The Bakery, and we're located here in the Sony Pictures lot in Los Angeles, California. And we've been here since the very beginning of opening our spot. So we've been here for over 5 years. We just passed our 50th anniversary. But before that, I worked at the Mastering Lab, which is pretty much an institution, the very first independent mastering facility that's ever opened in the late 1960s. So a lot of history, even where we are today.
Beautiful. Awesome. So obviously we know you've got a lot of work going on, but again, thank you for spending some time. So let's just start with, I know we have a lot of students in the room and a lot of other folks as well. They're going to have some great questions. We want to get into how you became a mastering engineer, but you're not just a mastering engineer. You're a lot of other amazing things. You work with specifically with vinyl as well. But just right at the top, so we can kind of kick it off. What exactly is a mastering engineer? How do you define that, Jett?
I think it is a good question to start with. A lot of people seem to have this notion that mastering or being a mastering engineer is kind of like the dark arts of music, and that it's a world that's full of mystery, and we like sprinkle fairy dust and the music suddenly turns into the final mastered sound. But mastering engineers, if you speak with them, will be happy to just let you guys know that mastering is very far from it, and it's very much an integral part of the music production process. So the easiest way to describe what I do is by comparing it to food. Everyone can relate to that. So the first step in creating a dish is gathering all your ingredients, right? So going to the groceries and ordering all the individual ingredients. So in the realm of music production, that is akin to recording. So you're gathering all the individual tracks in the music, right? Now, once you've gathered and recorded all the sounds, it's now time to move on to the second stage, which is mixing, editing. And that's when you gather each individual ingredient and making sure you have the right measurements and it's placed in the dish in the right sequence, just making sure that each individual element, in the case of music, each audio signal, each instrument just works harmoniously with the right balance, the right levels, and from the individual ingredients, you come up with one dish where everything just relates to each other in harmony. So you just experience the music in general. Now, with mastering, it's about making sure that your music translates to all the different playback systems in its best sound possible. So when you're talking about food, it's like putting it in the oven, doing the final baking, and doing the final touch up in terms of like garnish and plating. And with mastering, we make sure that wherever the music is mixed or recorded, all these individual idiosyncrasies get adjusted at the mastering stage. And it might seem like a very technical process, but there's a lot of creativity that happens there. And a lot of adjustments that happen at the mastering stage is very small increments. And that's actually one of the many reasons why people find it to be like a mysterious process. It's because somehow with all these little adjustments, you come up with an amazing sound. But the reality is it's this discipline of restraint and all these small increments that make all the difference when you're at the mastering stage. And yeah, that's hopefully I made it easy to understand what mastering is, but that's essentially what we do on a daily basis.
I thought that was perfect. Not only was it simple to understand, I'm now starving. So,
Yeah,
thanks for that. We're gonna have to end here so I can go get dinner. No, that was really perfectly put, Jett. So now that we have a little bit of an understanding of what mastering is, and I think you really explained that beautifully. Tell us about your journey. Like, who is Jett Galindo? How did Jett, where are you from? How'd you get started? How'd you find your way all the way to where you are now, doing all the really cool things you're doing in the mastering world at the bakery? So tell us a little bit about who you are and your journey.
Probably I'm not gonna go through like so deep, so much.
I want all of it. I mean, from
Okay.
like
And
the second you were born.
Feel free to interject in case you want to add anything, because I don't want it to be just like very one directional. And if the students have any questions, please send it over.
Yeah, I'll actually quickly say, just if you've got questions, go ahead and put them in. We do have a Q&A section about quarter till. We'll get into a lot of the questions. Okay. Go ahead and queue them up there. We, if something's really pertinent and we need to have it answered right away, I'll do my best to grab it. I saw a couple of folks raising their hands, so please go ahead and enter your questions in the Q&A section. We'll go ahead and get to them as quickly as we can. So thank you, Jett.
Yeah. But yeah. So talking about my journey, I feel that it's such an integral part of my profession, just to share how I got to where I am today. Just because the fact that I come all the way from the Philippines, which is like thousands of miles away, to now here in Los Angeles, California, mastering and cutting vinyl records. And I always like to say the fact that when I was a kid, I never really say that, hey, I wanted to be a mastering engineer. And I'm pretty sure that speaks to a lot of mastering engineers to this day. It's something that fell on our journey. And we entered this journey with the sense of preparation that only happens when you're very much passionate about audio in general. And for my case, rather than starting from the day I was born, I'm gonna start it to sometime during my early college days, around 18, 17 years old, because at that point, I just entered college with a psychology degree. So not a lot of people know, but I also have a psychology degree, and it's because my parents were professional musicians. They manage cover bands in the Philippines, even to this day. They told me that they'll support me, but as long as I pursue something that's not music, they'll be more just relieved, just because they're both musicians. They understand how much of a gamble it is to pursue music, and I totally understand that. But it also just made me realize how much I genuinely love music, and that I don't see myself ever just being my best self in any other profession. So it made me more prepared with all the difficulties that lied ahead. But yeah, in the Philippines, there's no audio engineering program. But and there was really no way for me to realize that, hey, this is the thing that I wanted to pursue. But I discovered that when I traveled to the US with my college choir, the Ateneo College Glee Club, and I met a colleague who was an alumni of my choir and is now in was at that time at Berklee College of Music pursuing music. And my friend GP Elleria, who's actually attending the webinar today, uh, he introduced me to the world of music production and engineering. And at that point, my my life just became laser focused into pursuing this career path. Because growing up, I've always loved music and I've also loved technology. So my dad got me into like he got me into building computers and tinkering with computers even um when I was younger. So I dabbled into a lot of graphics design, web development, video editing. I just love technology and I love music, and sound engineering was that perfect combination of the two passions that I love. And when I discovered that career path, just nothing else mattered. I knew I wanted to pursue audio engineering. And because there's no audio engineering in the Philippines, I went for the second closest thing, which is prepare to study abroad, which is I ended up eventually going to Berklee College of Music. But before that, while getting ready, I looked for the next best thing in the Philippines, which is work be surrounded by as much technology as possible. And for me, I found that at multimedia training facility where I helped train nuns and priests to do to do different types of
Wow.
multimedia. So it was actually for several months I was teaching priests and nuns how to build websites, do graphics design, but it so happened that that same place was also housing a recording studio
Mhm.
that was recording Christian music for the Philippine music scene. And from there, the timing was perfect. They were actually looking for an intern for the recording studio. And so I worked in the multimedia training facility during the day and interned at night from 7 p.m. to 4 a.m. And I did that with so much enthusiasm. And I think I mentioned this to Greg before, but I almost didn't get the internship because the day before my internship started, the senior engineer found out that Jett Galindo was a girl. And we laugh at it to this day, but the reality was I almost didn't get the internship if he found out earlier. But it was too late at that point, and I was pretty much slated in. So my it made me want to prove all the more that I deserve to be there,
Mhm.
because there's not a lot of women in the audio engineering industry, and it's gotten a lot better to this day. But there's very much some determination on my end to prove to people that I'm just as good in the recording studio. And actually, Greg, if we can show the first photo of,
Sure.
which is a collage of my time working in the recording studio. Um,
Pull
so
it up here. Give me one
yeah.
second.
So the name of the recording studio in the Philippines was SFX Studio, St. Francis Xavier Recording Studio. But yeah, so from there, I remembered the day I started learning Pro Tools, which is November 1st, 2005. And from there, we had a C24 in our studio, um, and a Command 8. It's like way back, but yeah, I'm very much grateful to have had that internship opportunity. Um, from there, when I became an intern, I eventually became the full-time in-house recording engineer um, in that studio in the Philippines. And I worked there until 2009. So I was there for 4 years
Very cool.
until I was able to make it into Berklee College of Music in Boston. So we can move on to the next photo, Greg. There you go. So in 2009, that's when I packed my bags, left everything in the Philippines and just started fresh in Boston, Massachusetts, and in Berklee College of Music. And from there, I just, if you can see, I not only worked in the recording studio, but I also did live sound. I also recorded a lot of classical music with my mobile recording rig. There's This is a recording session of a concert in MIT Kresge Auditorium. So I really just honed in, did everything I could. And when I was in Berklee College of Music, for me, the important thing was build my portfolio as much as I could. So for me, my hobby is to just record artists and musicians and just get out there and just collaborate with as many musicians as possible. And that was so fulfilling when I was in Berklee, because in Berklee I got to meet musicians from all over the world, just because it's a very international community. So in this photo on the lower left, you'll see me doing live sound for the Berklee Indian Ensemble. So they're very much active to this day, collaborating with A.R. Rahman. Um, and yeah, I was there at the very beginning when they're just starting out. So yeah, just a lot of portfolio building during that time in Berklee. And yeah, so I graduated in 2012, and my very first gig, we can move on to the next slide, Greg, was when I eventually made it. My very first job outside of Berklee College of Music is in Avatar Studios, but it wasn't, it didn't always it wasn't planned at that time. Back when I was in college in Berklee, I thought that I was gonna be a scoring engineer because I just really enjoyed classical music in general. And I'm one of the few students in Berklee College of Music that had that skill with classical music, especially with my mobile recording rig. But I was supposed to be a live concert recording engineer for the Aspen Music Festival right as I graduated from college. But, and because I was an international student at the time, my international employment authorization card as an international student didn't make it on time. So 3 months of my time after graduating suddenly became open. It just got scrapped. So I didn't have a job lined up at the time when the Aspen Music Festival fell through. So I reached out to people, and one of the audio engineering professors in Berklee College of Music told me to reach out to Avatar Studios for internship opportunities. So the first time I sent a letter applying to Avatar, I didn't hear back from them. So I sent it again. And the second time I sent my application, they responded, and I just had the time of my life. It wasn't easy. It's 3 months of internship full time in Avatar Studios, and that was around the time when Hurricane Sandy happened, and I was living in New Jersey at that time, and my bike got stolen. But I was full attendance, man. Just very much determined and dedicated, and from there I got hired as the in-house recording engineer after 3 months by Jerry Barnes, who's in the lower middle part of the picture. And Jerry Barnes is the producer of Nile Rodgers and Chic, and he's also the bassist of Chic. So I got to meet Nile Rodgers, Roberta Flack, and all these amazing musicians in the New York scene. Got to work with him, and I thought my career is already set. And I'd love for you to meet Jerry one of these days, Greg. He's an amazing person. But yeah, I thought my life was all set in New York. But one of the mastering professor in Berklee College of Music, Jonathan Weiner, who now happens to be the dean of education for Isotope, he reached out to me saying that there's an opening for mastering facility, a very serious opportunity that if you're only serious about pursuing, let me know, because this is a life-changing opportunity. And at this point, I haven't mentioned it yet, but when I was in Berklee, I also had a lot of interest with mastering, just because I also dabbled into mastering when I was working in the studio in the Philippines. I was using WaveLab at that time.
Very flat.
But just because of my eagerness to just explore as many fields of audio engineering when I was in Berkeley, the mastering professor thought of me to recommend for the position. And yeah, from there I knew that it's a serious opportunity. It's working with Doug Sachs. He's
Yeah.
the grandfather of mastering. And yeah, it was an amazing opportunity. I eventually got the gig, and I packed my bags from New York, left everything so I can work in the mastering lab. But from New York, I had to get myself reacquainted to a very like slow uh, country life, because it's all the way in Ojai, California, which is about 2 hours away from from Los Angeles. So we can move on to the next slide, Greg. So I left everything in New York, and it was an amazing time. But I had no regrets when I packed my bags, and I went full steam ahead with pursuing mastering under the mentorship of Doug Sachs. So if you guys Google who Doug Sachs is, he is considered the grandfather of mastering, and he was the man behind pretty much all the big names from the golden era of music in the 70s and 80s. So The Doors, Pink Floyd, Ray Charles, the Eagles, basically anyone in the charts at that time. Doug was the man behind it, and he was the mastering engineer behind the latest Diana Krall records, and all the Al Schmidt records was mastered by Doug. So there was no hesitation for me to pursue mastering and just learn from the man himself. And what came along with that mastering opportunity is to learn the vinyl mastering ropes under the mentorship of Doug Sachs. And from there, it there was no other direction for me but to pursue mastering full time. Unfortunately, 2 years from starting at the mastering lab, Doug passed away from cancer. And yeah, it was a really rough time with a lot of adjustments on my end and also my colleagues at the mastering lab. But in 2015, our head engineer Eric Boulanger immediately took action, and we were able to secure a spot here in the Sony Pictures lot to start the bakery. So this mastering studio where I am now started when the mastering lab closed after Doug Sachs's passing. So the bakery, we can move on to the last picture on my slide. So the bakery is where I am now, and pretty much 25%, three, yeah, three-fourths, 75% of the team are all from the mastering lab. So the spirit of Doug very much lives in our studio, and even our mastering philosophy of less is more, and just a very subtle approach to the whole mastering process is very much the philosophy of Doug. And in fact, it's Doug Sachs's birthday today. So if you look at my socials and the bakery mastering socials, we gave him some happy birthday greeting, and yeah, very much in his spirit remains around the bakery. But yeah, even to this day, um, I've continued on to cut vinyl records along with my colleagues. And the blonde guy on the picture, Peter Hewitt Dutton, actually joined us from Metropolis Mastering from United Kingdom. So our mastering series is 50% immigrants who traveled here to the US to pursue audio. So our head is Eric Boulanger, and our studio manager is James Carino. I'm very much, for me, I identify as a mastering engineer along with my team at the bakery. Music is very much a collaborative process. So for me, it's important that like the team is part of it too. So if you'll see here, a lot of our big records, it's not in the picture, but just some of the stuff that I've worked on with the bakery is, it's hard to like name names off the top of my head, but I got to work on Barbra Streisand's Netflix documentary. The La La Land soundtrack was something we mastered and cut the vinyl record here at the bakery. Um, Matt Bellamy's new record with the band members of Blur and the Jets. They're called the Jaded Hearts Club, was something I proudly mastered. Um, we did the Star Trek vinyl release recently. So there's a lot. And mastering, it's never a dull moment because mastering a full album can take a day. So it's a very fast paced career path compared to other facets, which is like recording or mixing, which can take days or weeks or even a month of just working on a couple of records. With mastering, it goes on very fast. That's why there's it's a very collaborative process because we really get to do our job by hearing the feedback and understanding the vision of the artists we work with. So yeah, I hope that covers a lot of the journey that I went through. And if you guys have any questions,
Oh, that's
I'd be happy to answer them.
That's awesome. That's awesome, Jett. So yeah, some great questions are coming through. I'm kind of queuing them up for the actual Q&A. So, but yeah, some really great stuff coming through. So please keep them coming. So there's a lot of stuff there that you've just kind of given us, a lot of great info, Jett. So I wanted to touch on a few of those things. One of them is, kind of your journey on, kind of getting over here and really kind of finding your niche or finding your passion with mastering. There are a couple of things I wanted to touch on and maybe have you touch on rather is one, the academic journey and what that looked like for you a little bit. There's a lot of stuff that goes into that. Obviously having the and happy birthday, Doug, having the ability to work with Doug and some of the other folks you've mentioned is really incredible. But maybe take us back a little bit. What were some of the things academically that meant something to you? And by the way, I wanted to also mention that it just seemed to be that you were touching on so many different elements of music. So obviously you have a good business side, maybe from your parents. You have been able to do stuff like, obviously recording doing front of house, live sound, that has to come into play when you're working as a mastering engineer. So maybe tell us a little bit about academically what your journey looked like. I know I see that there's some questions around, do you use Pro Tools? Do you use other things? Obviously, we're not specifically talking about, we're not forcing you to talk about that, but it might be kind of good to mention maybe just academically what some of that looked like for you to become a mastering engineer.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of things that is essential to the niche career that, for example, I'm in the mastering. There's a lot of things that you learn on the job, but you really learn them on the job by having the fundamentals that you gain from going to school. And again, school is a very it's a very loose definition because there's also the academic setting, but there's also many successful um, Grammy-winning engineers that didn't go through that conventional academic system. But for me, my time at Berklee College of Music is such an integral part of me being a successful mastering engineer today. Um, First of all, again, we all enter the audio engineering program not really knowing specifically where we're going to end up in, but we all learn the same foundations. And um, in the Berklee Audio Engineering program, Pro Tools is a part of it. And there are semesters where we just learn the in and outs of Pro Tools. But at that point, you still don't know what uh, audio specialty you're going to end up in. But the point is, at the very beginning stages of the audio engineering program, you learn the signal path, the fundamentals that is going to apply to all the different facets of audio that you're going to end up in. And so by the time that we've ingrained the skills of running a DAW with Pro Tools, that's when later on in the audio engineering program we learned more specific um, career trajectories within audio. So I took electives on post-production in audio. So that was really fun, where we did ADR and Foley. And I also took a mastering elective. There's also I also took a minor in acoustics too, and that was really fun. And then I also took some studies on electronics, where we also built. We were just soldering pretty much most of the day, so we're not in front of the computer. But the point is, DAW, like Pro Tools, is a very integral part of having like analog circuitry just translate to the digital aspect in terms of like the interface. And it's good to have a solid foundation in terms of like understanding how DAWs work, because no matter what DAW you're going to end up using, having that foundation just makes so much sense, because no matter what career you're going to be in, you're going to be expected to learn something that's specific to that specialty. So for example, in mastering, um, for a playback DAW, in mastering, a lot of mastering facilities use two DAWs. And back in Berklee College of Music, we used two DAWs. The playback DAW is Pro Tools, and for our mastering DAW, we used Soundblade at Berklee College of Music. Here in the mastering lab and at the bakery, our playback DAW is also Pro Tools, and our mastering DAW is Sadie. So Sadie is a British program that's created by Prism, and they're amazing. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask them. But there's a reason why mastering DAWs exist, because there's a lot of like technical specifications that take place within the mastering stage. So applying your metadata, setting the PQ codes, and the PQ markings on where the next songs are going to take place in the sequence. So things like that. You do need the feature that's exclusive to mastering DAWs. But the point is, it was very much second nature to me to learn Sadie, because of the foundations that I've learned from my time at Berklee College of Music. So it just made so much sense for me. And it's like riding on a bicycle for the first well, not for the first time. Like, you haven't ridden a bicycle for so long, but when you ride on a bicycle again, it's like it just feels second nature. And it's that learning of Pro Tools for me that just made so much sense. And in fact, I learned Pro Tools even before I went to Berklee College of Music. So I felt that really gave me an edge.
I thought that was pretty interesting. That, you know, all the photos, the slides you sent over, they all featured Pro Tools, and
Dude, that
you hadn't
was
planned that. That was
intentional.
yeah. So. No, that's awesome, Jett. And we've got, again, a lot of these questions are actually, I would say a little bit more than half of them are actually, you know, quite technical. They're asking some really great things. There's some stuff around portfolio building and all of that kind of stuff. So we'll make sure we get to them, guys. Don't be afraid. You keep them coming. I'm queuing them all up. So there's some really great stuff coming. I did want to ask you specifically on your journey. You mentioned, and I see your T-shirt. You were not the only female mastering engineer, but like you mentioned earlier, certainly when they found out, you know, that you were a female, that you almost didn't get, you know, invited to this gig. But, you know, thankfully it was too late. But I would say you were right on time. So I'm glad that happened. But and that you were able to get through. But, you know, fast forward to where we are now, we know that there are other women in the industry, not enough. But what do you think is happening? Do you feel like there's a change? Do you think what also needs to change to allow that to you know, to be more present? It's just kind of ridiculous to me that, you know, I'm thinking about my next album, and why would I care if the person behind, you know, the mastering console or whatever is a male, or female, or whatever? Well, all that matters is the quality of their work, right?
Yeah,
So
like
what do we do there?
at the end of the day, the goal is that like you are recognized not because you're a woman mastering engineer. It's just because you're a badass mastering engineer, badass mixer, producer. And yeah, somehow just the whole trajectory of the journey of the audio industry. It was very much a even to this day, it's very much a male dominated industry, but I'm very much fortunate to have been immersed in an environment that's very much supportive, and to have a team of colleagues who just rallied behind me. But yeah, it's definitely a lot easier now. And for the women who are joining us today, there's a lot of organizations that are very much active and supportive online, wherever you are in the globe. Uh, in fact, there's this community called Sound Girls that's very much active on social media, Facebook and Twitter. And Sound Girls is a global community that connects not just women, but even men who are very much supportive of the cause and LGBTQ, who are in the industry and just want to connect. In fact, there's this amazing live sound engineer from New Zealand that I became friends with because of Sound Girls, and I've also known a lot of people who were able to get their foot in the door just because of that community. So Sound Girls is great. There's also Women in Vinyl. Look this up. So Women in Vinyl does a profile on the many women who are part of the vinyl industry. So it's not just sound, actually. There's also the people that are behind sales, running record labels, running their own record store. So there's if it's good to remind ourselves that music and audio is such a big um it's such a big world where it you will do yourself a favor by exploring all these different career paths and professions that you wouldn't normally see on TV. So it's like the fact that there a lot of people want to be film directors, but there's actually like so many career paths in film. So there's cinematographers, there's the re-recording mixers, there's a picture editor, there's a lot. And you might even realize that your passion is on that very niche career path that you wouldn't have known if you didn't explore it. Like there might be someone out there who's very talented in audio forensics, and you'll only really know by exploring. So again, as a woman, there are so many online communities where you can explore and connect with people who are already in that fields that you're interested in. And it's by reaching out. Many of these professionals that I know are very generous with their insight. So just reach out. And you might not hear from them at first because of how busy they are, but the more you just follow them online, you'll eventually find ways to connect with them. And I think it's just that online connection that helps us get the foot in the door. So
that's awesome. Thank you, Jett. So that was so amazing. So my boxer actually knows how to open the door. She came in, she wanted to hear what was going on, and so normally we would keep going and then we would wait for the Q&A, but there've been so many questions queuing up. I kind of feel like I don't want to wait. Let's get to as many of these as possible. So if that's okay with you, Jett.
Yeah.
I'm going to take it right from the top. So I'm going to just ask, and then you answer, and we'll get through as many of these as possible. Again, I think we've got way more questions than we actually have time for. So let's see how many we can get through. And this has been amazing, Jett. Thank you so much, so much goodness there. So first question is from Richard B. Moore Jr. and asking, do you need to make multiple different masters for all the platforms out there today? There is no one size fits all for this, correct?
So this is, I'm not sure to what level of experience you have with mastering, but for me, the answer is no. The goal is that, especially the thing is you're hearing a lot of discussions about LUFS streaming standards, loudness normalization, but the fact of the matter is these LUFS loudness normalization settings on each streaming platform changes way more than you could ever catch up.
Yeah.
And the important thing is it's important to remind ourselves that these loudness normalization LUFS numbers are not standards. They're more references. And the important thing is, for example, Spotify, let's talk about that. The Spotify loudness normalization doesn't even get enabled on all different circumstances. So for example, um, the loudness normalization is only turned on by default when you're on Spotify Premium. The free Spotify users don't have that. So the important thing is, regardless of what setting um the listener has their streaming platform is, the goal is that your music sounds good. And the only reasonable strategy for that is to make sure that whatever moving target the playback is set to, your master sounds good regardless of that moving target. And if you're going to be joining different mastering communities on Facebook, actually I would recommend that you guys join this Facebook community called Mastering Engineers Worldwide. It sounds very generic, but all the top engineers are actually there, and they do a lot of conversations with this. Again, the love standards is such a very much it's a tired topic at this point, and there's going to be some master engineers that will have different opinions, but for you personally, just know that these standards are always moving targets. So the important thing is, no matter what delivery you send, whether it's one or multiple, it's that the music is gonna adapt to whatever playback adjustment the streaming platform does. So on our case, on the bakery mastering side, we deliver what is the best sounding master, regardless of the streaming platform settings are at. Um, and yeah, master engineers worldwide ask that question. Pretty much, it's going to be the same consensus. And yeah,
It's been an exponential difference, like in, things just change like every day now, right?
And
Yeah.
Please don't think that the minus 14 lufs is a standard. It's not.
Standard.
It's a moving target.
Yeah.
And however, one place where it makes sense to have a different set of masters, although this isn't necessarily something that you have to do all the time, but you are gonna get your money's worth by ordering a separate set of masters for vinyl cutting. So when you're releasing your music on vinyl, uh, depending on whether you're going to be sending your music to an actual vinyl cutter or a pressing plant or a vinyl broker, it's if you have the time, resources to ask your mastering engineer, or if you're the person mastering your own music, to have a separate vinyl cutting master where it's on high resolution with just a bit more headroom, it's actually going to benefit sonically to cutting on vinyl. I know we have limited time, but I actually wrote an article on releasing your music on vinyl. If you go to isotope.com/learn, look up vinyl mastering, and it's going to be there. It's an article on the many quirks, the sonic characteristics that come into play when releasing your music on vinyl. So yeah.
Hey, Jett, if you send us that link afterwards, you can email it to us. We'll make sure that all the registrants get that in a follow-up email. We'll be happy to send that out.
Absolutely. That's awesome.
Oh, thank you.
I'll put it on the link on the chat.
Oh, even better. Yeah, if you know it, that's great. And I'll go ahead. So Richard, thank you for that question. Next question is from Derek Yao. It's a two-parter. So the first part, small increments. What's the maximum, say, reductions and or boosts that you employ?
That's a good question. and I like that question just because the reality is with music in general, there's no absolutes. So you might think that there's a rule. It makes sense to have a rule, but again, music is such a subjective medium that it kind of does a disservice by setting yourself like, what's the maximum number. I mean, actually, if a good way to answer it is that about 1 or 2 dB of boost or gain is a lot in mastering, actually. And it's a very good practice if you're going to be exploring mastering for yourself, to just do a lot of A/B critical listening and that's how you grow and improve as a mastering engineer. And even for me to this day, a lot of mastering engineers rely on A/B critical listening. And when I say A/B, it's like comparing um what music is if there's this 2 dB boost with or without. Listen to the difference. And once you've gotten the hang of that sonic difference between flat and plus 2 dB at 1K, then go further and listen to how flat versus 1 dB sounds. And it might seem like a very
Trivial.
tedious process, but it's actually going to make it easier for you to keep practicing those mastering increments by collaborating with someone else. Offer to do mastering for a different artist. It's this collaborative process that really makes the whole mastering process um, effective, because it's you're going to be the best um, as a mastering engineer by being a neutral pair of ears when you're
Hmm.
listening to the master. And
Hmm.
by having that neutral set of ears, you're able to appreciate the music in a very big picture perspective. And you're able to make these A/B critical listening in less biased process. And you can master music that you've mixed, and I've done that myself because I still mix from time to time for my friends. Um, it's something I never promote because I'm a mastering engineer. Um, but anytime I have to master my own music, what I do is I take a break. I
Sure.
take a mental break so that I give myself the chance to just separate myself sonically, because you really get to do your job with mastering by not being obsessive with all the little elements. It's about seeing the forest as opposed to the individual trees.
Trees. No, that's,
So
I love that. I think that that just that there, that's the goal. That's the nugget I needed right there. No, that's awesome. So Derek has a second part to that question, which is what's your ideal session from a mix engineer, levels wise or compression wise? In other words, what's the standard which you'd expect from a mix engineer?
okay, I appreciate this question because um, this is a question that's asked from me for clients who are working with me for the first time, because it's understandable that clients will want to deliver the right specifications when they want their mastering done. And it's good to have these as a starting point, but every mastering engineer actually has their own set of preferred specifications. But for our case at bakery, we don't impose strict requirements. When I say that, what I mean is we don't impose a strict like headroom level.
Mhm.
Like it's fine. And this comes into play a lot when we work with electronic hip hop producers, where the sound of their production very much relies on the two bus processing or limiting. So there's this it's not a misconception because there's some virtue to sending your mixes with headroom, but there are cases where the mixer and the producer has a fully realized sound by passing their mix through a limiter or two bus session, like two bus processing. And sometimes it does the music a disservice when a
Mhm.
mastering engineer asks for a mix with more headroom, so bypass the limiter. Because there are times when the two bus processing, compression, and limiting is a big part of the producer sound. When you bypass that limiter and compression, it kind of collapses the music.
Yeah, sure.
And I hear that a lot with electronic and hip hop and just that hard hitting pop productions. So at the end of the day, for us it's not we don't impose that strict requirement. In some cases, it benefits us a lot if the client or the mixer sends both a limited version of the mix and a non-limited version of the mix, just so we have some options to work with when we're mastering. However, there are cases when it's a very hard-hitting production where it makes more sense for us to receive a less limited version as opposed to non-limited, just
Non-limited.
because the limiter
Plays a
imparts
big
a
role.
big sound to the final sound of the music.
Sure.
So, and just to add more to that requested specification, we really ask for the music to at least be 24-bit as opposed to 16-bit, because when you send 16-bit mixes, it's either truncated or dithered. So we would like to have just straight up purely lossless wave audio that's either 24 or 32-bit float.
Sure.
And keep the sample rate native to what your mix session sample rate is. So yeah, that's
Awesome.
my take on it.
So much gold here. Derek, thank you for those questions. So we've got so many questions left. Let's see if we can maybe fly through some of these. Well, not fly, because you're really giving each of these such great answers. So you kind of answered this a little bit in some of what you were saying, but maybe you wanted to elaborate a little bit. So the next question is from Ramin Peer. Do you prefer to rely on your ears or an analyzer or a reference track, I guess, when you're approaching a master?
Oh, I like that question. Okay, so the reason I also like that question is because um again, it's not like patting yourself in the back when you say, oh, you got to rely on your ears, because at the end of the day, um if you, with the treated room and a set of speakers that you're really accustomed to, there is so much virtue to trusting your ears more as opposed to um um your meters or reference. So just to add to what I just said, when you're mastering, it's the first thing that I would suggest for anyone wanting to master from their own setup is to have set up a fixed gain. So when I say fixed gain, um listen to some records that you really like, and listen to it in full level, and listen to it in a level where it feels that you're able to appreciate the music the best that it could, in the level that like you really enjoy, like just in full level. And whatever level that is, that you've enjoyed all the music that you're aiming for as the master level, keep your level to that setting. Mastering studios work um on a fixed level. We might have some different calibrated levels based on certain demands that we're aiming for, but we always work on a fixed level. So on ours, it's about 75 dB SPL. So if you have a SPL meter, um, having some white noise on your speakers and just measuring it with that and setting it to about 75 dB SPL makes sense. Um, it's also equally helpful to just listen to the records that you really appreciate and consider as like your reference target when you're mastering, and set your level to that. In fact, again, I keep mentioning Isotope. It's because I just write for Isotope as a contributor for their mastering topics. But if you look up the Learn portal on Isotope, there's a topic there about setting fixed gain when you're mastering. So look that up, because it's very important to actually giving your ears a chance to master accurately. And because if you're keeping it at fixed gain, you're able to just acquire an internal compass when you're mastering, and you're also getting used to how your speakers behave when you're on just that level alone. Because if you keep tweaking your output gain, you're kind of losing that fixed element on your mastering setup. And also the entire discussion about Fletcher-Munson curves kind of falls into play if you keep moving your output gain a lot. Actually, that for me is more helpful than like looking at my loves meters. But reference reference tracks are also very helpful. It's not something that I'm gonna um like set aside, because it's very helpful if the client has a very specific sound that he's going for. Um, and it's good to use that as reference, but definitely take the time to calibrate your listening environment, just so you're giving your ears a chance. In terms of using your reference masters, um I'd recommend something like tonal balance control plugin, because you're able to reference how the tonal balance is on your masters as opposed to that reference track, just to see if they're living within the same world. So something like that. But yeah, if you're gonna be a master engineer, take the time to give your ears a chance to do its job, and that's by calibrating your speakers, and just getting to know your setup. And it doesn't have to be like $1,000, $20,000 speaker. It's about getting used to the speakers you have, and it's by getting used to your mastering setup, you're allowing yourself an internalized compass for
Awesome.
making all those um minimal increment settings on your mastering chain.
Well said. So, Jett, looks like we're almost out of time. However, it looks like we've got special allowance if we wanted. I mean, I know you're very busy, but would you have a little bit of extra time to continue going on for a
Let's
little
do
bit?
it. I'm
Awesome.
glad that you guys have questions.
Yeah, I mean, it's time with Jett Galindo. Of course, there's going to be a lot of great questions. So, and thank you so much for answering these. So I'll keep going. We've got Cristabel Santos, a fellow woman in audio here in the Philippines. So one of your audio sisters from the Philippines. You mentioned that mastering is a really fast process compared to recording and mixing. How many songs do you usually end up finishing in a day?
Damn, you guys are like in here with prepared questions. So the thing is, I don't like it. It's a very, again, it's personal opinion. I don't like it when people brag about how fast they master or how many tracks they've mastered, because like at the end of the day, you just want to take the right time to do what's best for the music, as opposed to like timing yourself and like having a record. Because I know of certain mastering engineers who brag about mastering a track in 8 to 15 minutes. It's like that's not fair to
That's
the
the point.
music.
Yeah.
Uh Sometimes I'd finish a track in 15 minutes. Sometimes it would take me a whole day for one song. It
Mhm.
really depends. But um when I say that an album can be finished in one day, that's a very normal workflow, just because especially when you're working on an album, it's usually the first one, two, three tracks you take a lot more time, but eventually you kind of get a better understanding of the full picture of the album. So albums, so the rest of the music in that album time tends to go much faster. So eventually you'll end up working on three songs in the album in 1 hour. I try not to like rush too much after that, but um I recently worked on a an 80 track album, and I did not finish it in a day.
Yeah,
No,
I don't think that would be a day.
no, that's not, that sucks. But I pretty much paced it in 1 week, 1 week's worth of mastering. If I am good working on a tight deadline, I can finish a 30 track album in 2 days. I've finished a 30 track album before in one sitting, because it really makes it, it actually has a lot of virtue to working on an album constant.
Mhm.
So like, because you're already at that headspace and you just wanted to continue, you can take breaks here and there, but it's nice to be able to master an album from beginning to end in one session, just because you you retain that headspace. But for a 80 track album, you do need an ear rest.
Time. Sure.
Your ears need that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good question.
Awesome. Cristobal, thank you for that question. So we're going to jump over to we've been getting questions on YouTube and some of the other live social platforms as well. So here's one from YouTube. How, as an artist engineer, can I gain, or do I gain contacts like yourself to help with the workload? So I think that's a question really around, getting clients and
Um,
networking
can
and
you say that again? Just
sure.
so.
Yeah. How, as an artist or an engineer, do I gain contacts like yourself to help with the workload. So I think, this student or young professional looking to work, and how, basically are, networking and
Okay.
getting
So
clients.
just working opportunities. Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's definitely much harder with the COVID situation, and we've had people reached out wanting to intern, but for our case, it's definitely a lot harder just because we work in the Sony Pictures lot where um they're very much strict with their COVID restrictions. But one thing I can say though, especially for people who are um in other countries, heck, I came from the Philippines. Um, the thing that really got me connected with other professionals um, is social media. In
Mhm.
fact, just from my personal experience alone, um, it's funny because I got the mastering gig and working at the mastering lab because the mastering professor from Berklee College of Music, we were we maintained connection through Facebook, and somehow he thought of me when he wanted to recommend someone to work in the mastering lab, and he reached out to me through Facebook. I also know, like, I also got a lot of opportunities because of Sound Girls.
Mhm.
And I'm very much active with Sound Girls, and I was able to discover Sound Girls when they were starting out because of Twitter. And I was based in Ventura, where in Ojai, California. Ojai is pretty much part of Ventura County. And the founder of Sound Girls, who's the live sound engineer of Pearl Jam, even to this day, amazing woman, Carrie Keys. We connected because she's also based in Ventura somehow. And maybe Twitter kind of like got us. I was able to find the news about Sound Girls because she was based in Ventura, and that was like way back in 2013, 2012. Because at that time I just wanted connection, like to connect with people as like someone in the middle of Ojai where there's nothing that's happening and everything closes at 6 p.m. I needed connection, and at that time I wanted to reach out to Women's Audio Mission, um, which is a very thriving nonprofit that's based in San Francisco. But at that time, they were just very much based exclusively in San Francisco because of the whole nonprofit situation.
Mhm.
So they didn't have any presence in LA. But through Twitter and I was able to connect with Sound Girls, and Sound Girls is now this huge, amazing organization that now ties with Spotify for the Make It Equal directory, which is my quick segue to the Make It Equal .com website. So
Yes.
let me write it here. Um, makeiteql.com. So it's a directory for if you're women or LGBTQ. This is a directory for all the different facets of audio, and actually not even audio, also live sound, lighting.
Awesome.
So any job opportunity in or any profession in the entertainment industry, find someone that's very much related to your passion and connect with them there because it's like there's even someone whose specialization is lighting and effects and it's in the Make It Equal directory. And
Is this global, this
yes,
directory?
it's global, and in fact there's actually some people who put in who are from the Philippines and Make It Equal, and there's people from the UK, Mexico, Australia, New Zealand. So look it up, and it's actually funded by Spotify. I know Spotify can do better when it comes to royalties and all that. It's a long discussion, but they're making efforts to making sure that um the just representation
We'll
is
take every positive effort.
so yeah, and also just one more example of social media helping with job opportunities. This isn't my story, but I always like sharing it. LinkedIn.com, LinkedIn. Um, I have a friend, Fela Davis, who's a live sound engineer, and she just maintained her LinkedIn profile, and somehow I forgot the name, but it's a Grammy winning jazz artist is looking for a live sound engineer, and he managed to connect with Fela, and Fela Davis is now for the longest time, for like over 5 years, the touring live sound engineer for Christian McBride. There you go. So yeah, social media works, and it's not a one-way street. It's follow the people you look up to on social media. I'm not telling you guys to follow me, but yeah, it would be nice if you guys follow me on Instagram
You
on
should.
these. But yeah,
Absolutely.
I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys might have. But um, and also on Women in Vinyl, for example, they feature profiles of these different experts in different very niche fields in vinyl. And and if you look up one of the pressing plants, Furnace Record Pressing, for example, they always post job openings on social. So um the internet is your oyster. Is that the right way of saying it?
Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
perfect. Yeah. Awesome, Jett. Thank you. So we'll do a couple more, and then I think we'll call it an evening or a morning, depending on where in the world you are. Let's see. From Eduardo Andrioli, and please forgive me if I butchered your name. Jett, do you send more than one version of a master to the client so he or she can choose which one they think feels better, or do you
mhm.
send the one that you think is the best and wait for a revision? And then a
That's not
follow up. Yeah, let me. I'll do that because it's kind of a combined thing. And then, how do you manage it if the client is listening in a very hype space with, with speakers and maybe not the best listening environment, and then they ask for a revision? How do you manage that? So,
okay. Let me start with the first question.
mhm.
Like now I'm blanking. Okay. So that this is a very helpful question, because when I was starting out, and this is more for not just for the client but also for you, especially when you're just a young mastering engineer that's starting out. It's part of the learning process for you also as a master engineer to give maybe one or two versions of your master, and that's part of the process of getting to know your client. So at this point in my journey, I've been a master engineer since 2013. It's very rare that I give more than one version, just because but the master that I deliver is already based on the notes that they have from the very beginning of the mastering session. They tell me, I've had clients who give me like very bizarre notes, like telling me that this music is about like me standing in the middle of the rain. Things like mastering. But I mean, at the end of the day, at this point in my career where I've mastered multiple music for multiple clients, um, I've gotten to a point where my internal compass as a mastering engineer in relation to our mastering studio is very much tight in a way that I already know what I'm going for, and when a client asks for a certain sound. Um, if in the process they have something different that they want to try, like for example, I have a client that asked me, hey, could you do another pass where I just want to hear a bit more treble and mid. I just I want to see how it feels. Or sometimes they would just ask me that but they're not sure, so I already make the initiative to just give them two versions, one with that boost at the top end, just to give them options. But um when I was earlier in my journey as a master engineer, I tend to do that more often. Um, and it's more about it's a journey of like getting to know the client, but also like improving your own skill set as a mastering engineer. It's fine if you have to give two versions. Try not to give three because you're gonna have a hard time. But yeah, it just helps you narrow down the path towards the artistic direction your client's going for. And the second question, this actually happened recently. I had one client who said that they came back telling me that they love the masters, it's fully approved. But then the next day they told me, hey, um the music is distorting on my iPhone. It's fine on the other phones, but my iPhone is distorting even on low level. So at that point, it's very much easier at this point for me now since I've been doing this for years. But you also have to gauge and figure out what is causing that situation on your client's end. I I try not to dismiss client feedback, um even in those cases. I even At that point I already knew that it's not the master that has a problem, but it's that specific consumer device with something is broken on that device, not on the master. But I still take the time to ask another colleague with an iPhone, hey, listen to this. I just want to make sure that like no stone is left unturned before I respond to the client. But um you have to be kind when it comes to um communicating with the client. You don't want yourself to come off as like lecturing the client on how they should listen to their music. It's a very two-way street. But whenever I ask my client to listen to their masters, especially when they have just not the best sounding speaker at home, what I do is I just ask them to listen to as many playback systems as possible. The earphone, the headphone, your phone speakers, your car, these are all consumer devices that have very that there's so many variables when it comes to the sound quality of those devices. But at the end of the day, does the music feel good? Does the music are you able to respond to the music sonically and emotionally? And also listen to other music in that device and see how the master feels in relation to those other tracks. I feel that that helps give your client perspective, even if they don't have like the best sounding speakers on their end.
You're too good at this, Jett. You're too good at this. So I think we're going to take one more, and then we're going to leave a little bit of time for you to give your last thoughts, Jett. So Jesse Seipold, and again, please forgive me if I'm ruining anyone's name. This is actually there's like 6 or 7 questions in here. Maybe I'll do a couple of them just considering the time. But there's some really great stuff in here. So any advice on mastering live recordings, for example, acoustic solo performers, live rock, recorded vinyl, DJ sets, etc.?
Okay. Um, so live acoustic performance is very different from a DJ set. So yeah, again, there's no one formula, but especially for live performances, there is gonna be some just expect some uh noise and like random sounds to be part of the music. Like at the end of the day, you don't want to obsess over these little noises like a cough or like just some noise, random noise that gets picked up. Ultimately it's a live performance, so those noises in the background are part of it. So it's good to have RX to remove noise that's very distracting from the music. But I find that when you're mastering live music, it's good to like exercise that restraint. um Treat the music as it's meant to be, as a live concert. You don't want to like um just mm, put so much elbow grease on the music that it kind of like gets morphed into a sound that is not live, like making it studio wish when it's not meant to be appreciated as a studio recording. So yeah, it's about maintaining that perspective. Live is live. So you have to keep that live element at the back of your head when you're mastering. So again, different music has different requirements. So a live classical performance will be very different from a live DJ set. But remembering that there's a live element to the music will help you get towards a final destination.
What if it's a live DJ set of an acoustic solo record? All right. So another one from Jesse, which I thought was really interesting. Your thoughts on AI mastering? You know, people always do better, but curious to hear your thoughts on the matter.
Okay, it's not a hot take. It's not like a scary question to ask.
Jett Galindo hot take.
So I totally understand why there's the existence of AI mastering like Lander. There's e-mastering, which is super cheap. Um, so I answer this with the perspective of someone coming from the Philippines. So mastering with and the Philippines, I grew up with the understanding that there's no mastering facility in the Philippines. And mastering engineers and mixing engineers can be very expensive when working with someone in Capitol Records, or Lursen Mastering, Ludwig, Gateway, Metropolis. I'm just saying all these like big boutique names. And many of these countries that have never had mastering before, um, they just try to like um, bypass mastering altogether. So for me, I like the that's one thing I appreciate about AI mastering. So um, I like the fact that it introduces the concept of mastering to people who've never had their music mastered before. So at the end of the day, AI mastering is very much akin to just um, mass two bus processing in a way, because mastering is very much how mastering is defined is because of the human element of someone doing the final mastering adjustments on your behalf as the artist. So in a way, I find AI mastering more similar to just throwing uh really good two bus processing on your master, because you're missing the human element. However, I do like the fact that it introduces the concept of mastering and what mastering can do for countries that really couldn't afford mastering and have never tried it before. um but there is a very big sonic difference between automated mastering as opposed to human mastering. So I find it to be a gateway. And I've seen a lot of people who've started with AI mastering that have eventually moved on to working with a human mastering engineer, because it really doesn't compare. I do like the fact that it's a gateway to mastering.
I love it. Thank you for that, Jett. So we've got so many other questions that have come through. We're not going to be able to answer any more of them, but fortunately, most of the ones that have come through, you've actually answered a lot of that in the the conversation that we've had. So for those of you who didn't get your questions specifically answered, A, I'm very sorry, but B, do watch this back and you probably get a good amount of that answer back. Jett, I wanted to leave the last bit of it to you before we're going to turn it back over to Shauna to kind of close up shop here in a second. But any last words of wisdom that you'd like to offer everyone that's joined us today?
Um, I think the fact that you guys are here in this webinar is already a good sign that you guys are well on your way to just really going on your journey towards just producing or engineering for music. But again, the best resources are already right in front of you, which is the internet. So the internet is rich in resources. And in fact, before I head off, like there are a couple of I listed down some free certifications that I recommend while we're still in lockdown. And they very much are very complementary to pursuing your further knowledge in Pro Tools and just your journey towards an audio career. So um, I would recommend practicesafesets.co. I'm gonna put the link right on the chat, but it's a certification that shows that you know your COVID-19 safety precautions, and it's very helpful if you're gonna be in doing live sound, for example, or broadcast. All panelists and attendees. And another thing that's very popular right now is the certification for the Dante, which is an audio networking that ties in a lot with Avid and Pro Tools. So these two certifications are free. So I felt that there's it's worth sharing something that's actually going to be a helpful tool for you guys. It's all in the internet, and all these organizations are all starting to pop up online. That's um goal is to help people like you guys get your foot in the door in the audio industry, entertainment industry. So yeah, and feel free to reach out to me, Shauna or Greg, if you guys have any questions. I'm it sucks that we don't get to cover all of the questions, but yeah, there's gonna be more of this. So
We're just
save
gonna
those questions, and we're
we're
definitely
just gonna
gonna, yeah.
yeah, we're just gonna have to have you back, Jet. That's all there is to it.
I'll
Jet,
see you
thank you
guys at
so
NAM.
much. What was that?
I'll see you guys at NAM.
There you go. We'll hang out. We'll do a AI versus Jet. No, I'm just kidding. We won't do that.
Oh no.
Jet wins. No, Jet, thank you so very much. You are just so incredible. The amount of time and information that you just so freely give. We cannot thank you enough. From all of us at Avid and from everybody here, on behalf of everybody here, thank you so very much. I think we definitely need to do a part two. So with that, I'm gonna again say thank you. I'm gonna turn it back over to Shauna and wish everybody a great morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you might be in the world. Everyone.
3 time zones, man.
Yeah, it's nuts. Jet, thank you. Shauna, the floor is yours.
No, thank you guys so much. That session was awesome and went into such detail. And I don't think I've ever heard someone kind of explain this story in such a unique way, Jet. It was really awesome to hear.
Happy.
And thank you everyone for joining. Like I've been managing the socials and just looking at YouTube and Facebook and LinkedIn and just seeing everyone kind of engaging and asking their questions there, which has been awesome. Along with, joining the webinar here live and asking their questions. It's what we love to see. Like we put these sessions on because we want to engage with students and educators and basically anyone who wants to learn more about the industry, no matter what your current role is now. Even when Jett, you mentioned that, you studied a degree in psychology. It doesn't matter what you're studying or doing now. If you've got a passion for it, we want to be able to provide a platform for you to ask your questions and to learn more. So yeah, it's been a really great session and thank you everyone for joining.
We're going to be announcing?
Yes, we will be announcing. So Jett, I don't know if you want to take a couple of seconds there to just pick an attendee at random. This is the first time we're doing this. We've done a couple of students industry sessions before, which have been really successful and insightful as well for us at Avid to just, to hear more about what students want to learn, what students want to know, which is great. And so we'll be continuing these. We've got sessions probably coming up once a month, which is great. I'm always looking for feedback from students and teachers, especially from institutions or wherever you are in the world. Feel free to send me an email. It's just, I think it's actually on there on the screen, shauna.purcell@avid.com. We want to hear about, what you want to learn, and we'll be able to try and get someone awesome in the industry like Jett to talk about that topic. So without further ado, Jett, I don't know if you've picked, say, a winner. Again, this is completely at random. We want to be doing more of this because we want people using the tools and getting creative. So Jett, is there anyone there that's kind of...
So again, it's random, and I'm using a randomizer, and the winner, so the name is Jessie Sepolt. Is Jessie Sepolt online?
Let's have a look. Jessie. I can still see Jessie is here and joining.
So there you go. Congratulations on your Avid vocal.
Congrats. Woo, that is awesome. So I just saw the comment. Yeah, which is awesome. So Jessie, you've seen my email there. I'll actually just type it to you. So it's shauna.purce@avid.com. There you go. If you want to just shoot me an email and follow up. Very excited. We love that. If you want to shoot me an email and I'll be able to respond, I'll rope in Jett and Greg as well, so they can see that Pro Tools license is going to you. But thank you for the awesome question. It was really insightful, which is great. And Jett for answering that, Greg for hosting. It's been a pleasure. So I will be getting that license over to you, Jessie. Thank you again for everyone attending. Yeah, please stay tuned for the next one. This will be on demand, so we'll send that out. I'll be sure to rewatch this and grab all the links that Jett sent through to you. So we'll have like a little page there with all the content. So you guys can, just in case you did miss it, and so you don't have to go through the whole thing and find that, that will be coming out in an email very shortly. So yeah, thank you everyone again for joining. Thank you, Jett. Thank you, Greg.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you,
Take
guys.
care.
Cheers. Everybody be safe.
Everyone stay safe. Yeah. And yeah, have a great rest of the week.
See ya.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.